I now call to order the November 21st, 2022 meeting of the Wallingford-Swarthmore School Board to order. As you are willing and able, please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hey, Ms. Elias, will you please take roll call attendance? So, if you could please take the attendance roll call, please.
Dr. Grande,
Here.
Mr. Henry.
Here.
Mrs. Holbert.
Here.
Mr. Kudas.
Here.
Mrs. Dolay.
Here.
Mrs. Vogt.
Here.
Mrs. Whitsett.
Here.
Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Walkman.
Here.
Okay, we have 9 voting members here tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, we'll open this evening with our student representatives report. Ms. Halpay.
Good evening, everyone. As much as I dislike doing cheesy things, every November I spend some time reflecting on the community, and I take time to think about the things that I'm grateful for. And then I make really lopsided hand turkeys. This weekend, the football team unfortunately lost a really close game against Ruston, but they had an amazing season this year. And our band got to play Minnesota Rouser a lot thanks to the numerous wins and touchdowns, and the games were also much fun for the entire community. Speaking of performers, the fall drama Sense and Sensibility was amazing. The actors' comedic timing was brilliant, and I had so much fun sitting in the audience. Everything from their costumes to their acting was spectacular. So if you haven't been able to watch any Haven production yet, definitely try to go to the spring musical this year. I've heard it's a lot like turkeys, very greasy. I also wanted to bring some attention to the accomplishments of some of the students that take part in Panther Press and the making of the yearbook. These students took a trip to St. Louis and participated in a journalism convention. They got to attend many cool lectures and discussions and learn so much. I'm so excited to see the already amazing coverage and articles evolve. Kelly Montague, a sophomore, actually ended up getting 3rd place under the category for feature photo. This was a national level competition, which makes her accomplishment all the more impressive. Many students from the high school also attended a conference about anti-Semitism in New York this month. I heard from all the teachers and students that went on this trip that it was an incredible experience. Having more opportunities to attend forums and conferences such as this will definitely help spark conversations back at our school, which is incredibly important for our community. The students this month have been able to do all sorts of amazing things, but it would not have been possible without the support of our community, teachers, and staff. Thank you to everyone for all the opportunities that you have given us. We hope to continue to make you all proud.
Thank you so much for that very, very kind and full present discussion this morning. And thank you for, this is coffee, and there's a reason why it's filled with coffee today, this evening. And thank you for bringing attention to the accomplishments of our students. I appreciate that. With that, we'll turn to Dr. Marce for superintendent's report.
Thank you for that report. You do make us very proud with your accomplishments and the accomplishments of your classmates. So thank you. I wanted to start where Aditi had made reference to the game. And before I do that, we do have 3 focus topics. We have a regional manager from the nutrition group who will be here to talk about the services they provide, then an update with regards to the strategic plan, and then business manager Ms. Martin is going to give an update on the budget. So my report will be relatively short considering the amount of time that we're going to unpack some of this. But I have to share with you that it was very difficult. I'm trying to get to this slide. Yes. So, you know, I as a former coach, a former athlete, I know that when you set out for the season, you have your eye set on the destination, and you're not really thinking about the journey. And when you've come so far, and sometimes it's just inches away, literally, it's a hard pill to swallow. But most athletes who reach that level of athleticism and caliber have a very difficult time processing the wonderful accomplishments that got them to this point. And they're essentially focused on what didn't happen. When you go undefeated and you get this far and literally inches away, I just want to know share with them, we are indeed proud of your accomplishments. We're proud of the journey. As you think about that tough game, I get very nervous, as though I'm the one competing. I tend to walk away. I go hang out in the parking lot and ask people, how's it going? I remember I told Mr. Clancy, as he was standing there and it was tied up 21-21, he said, where are you going? I said, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to the parking lot. I said, he goes, you're gonna watch from the parking lot? I said, no, I'm just gonna walk around the parking lot. And we're gonna come back and obviously it'll be over, but it was a thrilling game, but more so a thrilling season. So, you know, we wanna thank you. We wanna thank the coaches, the fans, the parents, and our staff for making it such a wonderful experience for our student athletes. Congratulations. Like everything else, tomorrow's another day. You tend to think about what's next, right? So athletes of this caliber, or any performance of that caliber, you shake it off and then you think about what's next, and you go back to the drawing board like everyone else does in terms of that process. But a great season nonetheless, and nothing to keep your head down for too long in terms of that game. So we continue to be very proud as you know, the accomplishments really keep coming. And I really, you know, very few people go seek out things of this nature. They tend to want to make sure that you are providing a premier service, a premier experience. Once you offer that, the rest just naturally comes, right? And the fact that the Pennsylvania Art Education Association recognized the district for its commitment to visual arts really stems from Jennifer Rogers, who's our K-12 art department chair, the entire WSSD art staff for their experience and their passion as they continue to provide really a well-rounded experience for our students in our community. I want to share that, you know, the 500 school districts in the Commonwealth, less than 9% can speak to this recognition. That's an elite class, which speaks to the level of commitment and the experience that we offer, right? So it says here, students in the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District celebrates the importance of well-rounded education with opportunities to engage in arts education courses at all grade levels, K through 12. The term well-rounded means courses, activities, and program in subjects such as English, reading or language arts, writing, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, world languages, civics and government, economics, art, history, geography, computer science, music, career, technical, health, physical education, and any other subject. So this speaks to our history, and it speaks to our trajectory moving forward, as we're going to talk a little bit about the strategic plan, which is allowing our teachers and our educators the opportunities and the experience that welcomes their innovation and their creativity to do what is in the best interest of our students. And when that happens, these are the byproducts of those particular experiences. So we're really honored and excited to be able to sit and watch and receive this on as a result of their hard work and their commitment. Now, it continues because I had the opportunity to go to the DCIU Art Showcase on Thursday night, where districts from Delaware County came to the IU, and we celebrated the artistic ability and the work of our students. And I'm excited because and I know I say this all the time, I'm really biased. I heard Dr. Sandberg, who was there, and he said, I don't care what anybody says, we have the best table and the best artwork here. And I said, I expect you to say that, Doc. He goes, no, I'm serious. Go look around, right? So another level of commitment and passion from our teachers and our administrators for being there. I wish I had recorded it because, you know, when you smile too much, your jawline kind of hurts. So walking in, I just had this grin on my face going through, and I was talking to Dr. Sandberg, and I said, Dr. Sandberg, so I said, this is really good. I said, there should be an auction. Like, we should put some of this up for auction and raise money for it. But what's exciting about this, along with the outstanding art community, is that Ms. Rogers and her team, I've asked to come to the December board meeting. We're going to bring some of those pieces and other pieces here as well for the board and for the community to see, and they're going to talk about their program. So I'm excited. You'll see that again in December. Also, another opportunity we had that was facilitated by Student Services and Dr. Sandberg, who led the conversation. Our very own board certified behavior analyst, Carly, Ms. Flanagan, was there on the panel along with another individual to talk about adolescent autistic child. So opportunities where we want to continue to partner with our advocates to make sure that obviously all of us are on the same page, moving in the same direction in doing that. So one of many and more to come. So I was glad to hear that it went so well and there was a good turnout, and we continue to offer those experiences. The Panther Pajama Run, again, my second year, it was exciting. I want to say this, that I think all of the track coaches should come out and begin scouting some of these young talents. There was a reason why I chose not to put my bin on and try to run. So it was a great event. A lot of people showed up, but there's another event coming real soon. I'll talk a little bit about that. So I want to make sure everyone shows up for that one as well. And then I want to share that MLK Day of Service has always been a day that I've been extremely passionate about in my years in education. It customarily should never be a day off, but a day on. So what we would like to do, and we'd like to host on January 16th. We are working in collaboration with our PTOs, our HSAs, our principals, and we would like to turn into a day on. We're going to offer opportunities at the high school from 8:30 to 12:30. We are going to bring the community together in providing opportunities to give back, to engage in service-related projects in under one location. I know that's been happening obviously throughout the school year. I know there's can drives. I know there's drives for Ukraine and other events that are happening across the world, even right down the street. What we want to do on this day of service is honor MLK's legacy by bringing everyone together under one roof and providing developmentally appropriate age appropriate service activities that help our students strengthen their sense of community, and that it's much bigger than just one person. It's all of us. So we're gonna get to the high school 8:30. We're gonna have breakfast. We're gonna have a short little presentation in the auditorium, a couple poetry readings, things. We're gonna have someone kick off with a keynote. It won't be me. I'll be too long, and nothing I say is really important anyway. And then we'll fill up the rest of the day with activities for our students. So we're excited and hope that you earmark that day and look forward to working with our PTOs and HSAs. This conversation came up last calendar school year when I met with the PTOs, and one of many community-related activities that they really wanted to wrap their arms around and support. So there's more to come, but wanted to share about this one specifically, which is right around the corner. Wanted to share some upcoming district dates with you. I mentioned before that turkey trot on the 24th. Though I'll be traveling, I know that I hear that Mr. Hindley has put on his track spikes on and his running shoes, and he's ready to rock and roll. Maybe that's why I found an excuse to be out of town, because I know he would absolutely destroy me in that in that race. But please come out and support if you can. And then obviously I tend to always remind the community about our upcoming events. We had a great facilities and finance meeting the other day, so a lot of new faces with a lot of questions. And I'm happy to see that. So I keep encouraging individuals, if their schedule allows, please show up. And then I'll end with as we head into the holiday break, whether you are staying near, whether you're traveling, please have safe travels, and most importantly, it's about spending time with your family and your loved ones. So wish everyone a happy holiday, and that's the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Merced. So many awesome things to celebrate there. Too many to even mention practically. So thank you so much. With that, we'll turn to our focus topics. Our first focus topic is the nutrition group update. Would you like to do any introductions?
Well, I think this is part of our opportunity to make sure that the board, sorry, I have your clicker. No problem. Yeah. So Sarah's going to walk us through really some background information about Nutrition Group, the level of service that they provide in the district, the type of programs that they provide, and the nutritional menus that are afforded through our students K through 12. So with that, I'll let you go at it.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah Bigger. I'm the regional manager with the Nutrition Group. I recognize some faces from over the years. We've been here for about 5 years. This is our 5th year here. So I know there's been a lot of changes over COVID. We're back into normal program. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to tell you what's going on in the cafeteria and maybe answer some questions. So First thing I wanted to do is give you some staffing updates. We are almost fully staffed. We're still missing a position at West, and we've hired 5 people since the beginning of the school year. We are investing in those individuals that are on site with summer trainings, whether that's for management staff or for hourly staff with professional development days, opening meetings, continual on-site training. The other big staffing update, if you weren't aware, our on-site director, Kristen, she left the district about a month ago. I wanted to introduce you to Kate Rittler. Kate will be your new food service or director of food and nutrition, starting actually the first week of December. Kate will be leaving for maternity leave at the end of February. But I wanted to point out that when Kristen left, you aren't just working with one director on site. You're working with the nutrition group as a full food service management company. So myself, our operations specialist, and additional trainees in the area, your district chef, all pulled together to be the on-site support that is needed to continue the program and operations. And that wouldn't change as we move into March, April, May. And then Kate will be back ready to go for the following school year. She's been with us for 3 years with the nutrition group, but actually trained here at Wallingford about when she first was hired for 4 months. So is familiar with the district, is familiar with the staff, the kitchen managers, already has some of those relationships built. So Kate will be here after that. Oops, that was the off button. Sorry. So some of our, I wanted to go over some of our goals. So basically getting back into normal expectations or exceeding those. Overall, we want to promote the program. That's always been a goal of ours. Additionally, highlighting nutritional options and increased communication with the students and community alike has always is a continual goal for us. So some of the things that we do to promote your program, we are returning back to those pre-COVID expectations. We have the high school salad bar started, as well as a made-to-order deli bar. The made-to-order deli bar is actually going to pick back up here at the middle school too. So we are moving back to those events. We've done action stations with Chef Steve on site. As well as some specialty rewards. Panther of the Month at the middle school always is treated to breakfast provided by our chef. That is a reward for their program. And in addition to some other promotions and giveaways, we always do lunch for life. So we are no longer free for lunch this year, but for 3 days, every first grader is treated to free lunch, whether their status is paid, free, or reduced. And that is sponsored by our vendors to pay for those paid and reduced meal prices. So hopefully we capture them in the beginning and they like the food. It's not so scary coming through the line. And that's something that we did return back to this school year. As we are still experiencing some procurement and food cost issues, we have taken the opportunity to refine the menu a little bit while trying to keep some of the student favorites on there. We continue to do our programs. So our programs include some of the items seen here. Farm to Fork is a feature of a local fruit or vegetable. Tasty Bites and Wellness Wednesday. Wellness Wednesday, I said this at the wellness meeting the other day, but for those of you that aren't aware, that is where we give a free sample of a fruit or vegetable to any student at the elementary level. They do not have to buy, they could be a packer, and they get a sticker that says, I tried something new today. You'd be surprised how many kids will take a sticker for chickpeas or try a chickpea for a sticker. This is an example for our recipe of the month. This is what I pulled this right off the school website. The sweet and spicy chicken bowl was at the middle school on November 16th. So that's just an example of where those are menued throughout our program. The other big thing we want to do is highlight our nutritional value that we bring to the students. So beyond featuring, the local produce, the Wellness Wednesday that we just talked about, we do offer unlimited fruits and vegetables for your students. That is not a typical program, National School Lunch Program. priority. Usually there's a half cup, those kind of serving sizes, but we don't turn any child away from wanting a fruit or vegetable when they come in and get the meal. And we always want to make sure that there's a nice fruit variety across the line. These are pictures taken off your serving lines this school year. So this is what the students see. These are at elementary levels with the pre-cups up. The other thing we are doing is either meeting or exceeding nutritional values required of the National School Lunch Program. While we meet our milk components and the sodium components listed here, we are 100% whole grain menu based on your RFP. Unless there's like extreme procurement review issues getting something in, but we are 100% whole grain. We are going to be implementing our new everyday nutrition education programs as well. Prior to COVID, we tried to do more nutrition education on a solo basis. We could get into a room or capture a small club after school or something like that, but that's really not conducive to hitting a lot of people with nutrition education. So we have these programs that will be in the cafeteria. So every kid that comes through, there'll be a little bit of nutrition education provided with something that's on the menu that day. In terms of increased communication, we do have a lot of flyer programs throughout the school. So for example, we have a Skip the Straw campaign, encouraging students to only select what they need for their program in terms of utensils and stuff. Additionally, our menus based on requests also identify all of our components that go into the meals. You'll see here like an example. Beyond that, monthly communication is going out via What's Cooking in Wallingford publication that's being posted to the school website, just to let parents or community members, I guess, know what's coming up, what's been done. That's something that was started last year, I believe, and has continued into this school year. Beyond that, I wanted to take a minute just to tell you where we're at post-pandemic. We've returned back to paid free and reduced status of students, except for breakfast now is free for all students based on statewide coverage. But we did, I think, everything we could to help educate parents that we're going back to paid free and reduced. We were at open houses, lots of letters went out, answering lots of phone calls, all 9 yards. So hopefully everyone was aware we went back to paid free and reduced. But I did want to show you what the numbers look like from post-pandemic, during pandemic, and currently this school year. So pre-pandemic, October 2019, these were our average daily participation numbers. You'll see 115 breakfast, just over 1,000 lunches, and about over $3,000 in a la carte. This year, right now, October 2022, we are exceeding breakfast. A lot of that probably has to do with the free breakfast continuing. We are exceeding in lunch too. We're significantly higher in lunch. So we are the kids that were with us for those free meals are still coming back regardless of the status change to the free reduced status. We are seeing a dip in a la carte. I do think that maybe some of these kids who are a la carte purchases have gone up to those meal components, but we are trying some different avenues coming up in the next couple of months for different healthier a la cartes. Hummus and vegetable cups, working with another vendor to see if we can get in some different Greek yogurts, that kind of thing, to start trying to sell those a la carte. So we may see that number go up, but the focus will be on that going up with healthier options. So that is to come. Part of this too, for those of you who were in the financial meeting last year, we talked about a deficit in terms of the program. The reimbursement rates came in much higher than we talked about during our budget discussion. So that is good. We are at a deficit right now for the school year. However, October saw a profit, and I see that continuing throughout the school year to make sure that we're able to cover our expenses despite what we were discussing at the end of last school year. So that looks promising. Final thing, I just wanted to let you know, give you a little idea of the company that you're working with. This year we started T&G Charities, and this is going to be a new program this year that's going to, give grants to our student workers to use for either college education or anything really after school, whether that's they're going into whatever trade, as well as our nutrition group employees near and far that maybe are on hard times, whether that's personal, whatever happens. So that's just something that we're really proud about. So I wanted to share that that's coming down for us as a company. And we're ready to keep growing and hitting the ground running and keep growing the program to the best that you and your students would want to see. And that's basically my presentation. Does anyone have any questions or comments or on any of those items?
So I'll just open up quickly. Sarah, thank you so much for the update. I'm really glad to see the numbers. I'm actually quite surprised at how high the numbers are right now for participation. So it's really, really good to see. I'm sure my own offspring is helping to bump those up. I did learn pre-COVID that they were eating breakfast at home and at school for quite some time. So I can attest in our own household that it is very, they enjoy the food. So, but no, it's really good to see the programming coming back as well. I know it was very difficult for everyone during that period that we couldn't operate as normal. But again, just thank you for the update, and I'm glad to see the program operating really well.
Great.
Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Henry?
Quick question. Last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were having difficulty procuring various recycle utensils that were recyclable.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you could give us an update on how that was going.
So we have the ability to bring in different compostable material. It would have to be a decision from a financial stance on if that's the direction that wants to go. So we are exploring that. I'm actually exploring that, just trying to get different vendors in, trying to see different things, whether it's in this school district or others. But there is a financial component to that. And we want to work with you on what you guys would like to see, because it is your school. But that decision does have to be made by the district, basically, on what direction you'd want to go.
Mr. Henry, I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know there was inquiries on the trays that were being used, and I think those trays were then much more sustainable from previous.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can, yeah.
the other issue though, last time we spoke, you're finding it difficult to procure.
Oh, yes.
Silverware, trays, et cetera, because of
Correct.
all the supply chain issues.
I
So
blocked
wasn't
that
sure if
out
was
from my
still a-
memory. So
Yeah, sure. So I was wondering if that still remains an issue.
No, not as much as we talked about before. When we did talk, I apologize. I do remember that we literally couldn't get that product in the
Right.
door. The option is there to have that product in the door. We have also switched over to reusable trays and utensils where we can throughout the district. I will say that it has become some hiccups in that with dishwashers going down, garbage disposal issues. Also, the utensils seem to be disappearing at the high school, so we may have to explore a not so permanent solution for the utensils there, but we have made those steps. So most of the schools are reusable trays unless there's a equipment issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Marcy?
Last year there was conversation with respects to the labeling of ingredients and families who are on dietary restrictions wanting to make an informed decision. Can you talk a little bit about ways, because I believe we've done some things that have
Yeah.
better identified those areas for some families who wanted to make sure that
Go back,
for
but yeah.
a number of reasons that their child and or the family is well aware of the ingredients within some of the meals that are offered.
I'm trying to go back, but it's not letting me go back. But there was a screen on here where, oh, there you go. Thank you. Sorry. So right here, this is what a typical day on our NutriSlice menu looks like.
Mhm.
So if this was interactive and you had the app there, you could click on this meatball hoagie and it would give you the nutritional components. So it'll
Okay.
tell you sodium, whether it's gluten-free or, whatever the major components are in here. Additionally, below here, you will see on our menu, each of our items identify the meat choices that is is part of that. So this meatball is a beef and chicken meatball.
Okay, all
So
right.
you would see that underneath each thing that was questionable.
yes,
If it's like cheesy breadsticks, I don't have anything listed under that because there's no meat component of that, but we did add this line to anywhere that where there was a question of
Yep.
the components made of that.
thank you, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much.
All right. That takes us to our strategic plan update with Dr. Conley.
Well, good evening, everyone. So on these cold November days and nights, there was a spark in the air in the Wallingford-Swarthmore School District. Thank you. My sons would call that a dad joke, but I'll take it. So
Are you here all night?
I am. I actually am. So there's a spark in the air. It's our Strategic Planning Action and Re-envision Committee. And this is an inclusive, dynamic, engaging process. And we're excited to share our progress and some of the direction that we've gone this fall. So one of the things that we, in an effort to really have an inclusive process for our community, we are going to send out a community survey. And I think at first we talked about the surveys last calendar year, and we wanted to make sure that we engaged as many community members as possible. So on Monday, December 12th, we're going to send out a survey. It's going to run from December 12th to December 23rd, and that will help to refine what we're going to call our vision for impact. This will highlight also how to get involved in the strategic planning process. So this is an opportunity for everyone in the community to remind each other, hey, make sure you fill out that survey. And if you want to get involved, it's also an opportunity to elicit any kind of feedback and any stakeholder individuals that really want to help us in this process. So as we said, we desire as many voices as possible in our process. So that's really important, but really remind each other. And I'll go back to the slide at the end, but remind everyone to fill this out. It's really important. We're going to have, originally we talked about 2 community opportunities. We're actually going to have 4. And this is, again, an opportunity for everybody in the community to get involved. So you're going to notice how we did this. So we're going to have a Thursday evening. This is Building Vision for Impact, Thursday evening in this room on January 5th from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. There's going to be a meeting during the school day in person for those folks that are able to join us from 9 to 11 in B226. We have additional opportunities. This is called Actualizing Pathways, which will happen in March. We're going to have a Saturday morning meeting from 9 to 11 here in the library. And then Thursday, March 16th, we're going to have a virtual meeting in the afternoon. So we're trying to find as many opportunities to engage our community in our engaging process. So how did we get here? So last calendar year, we did the audits. There were 3 audits that we did, but we also have our special education plan as well as our comprehensive plan. And that really what we call a crosswalk. We took all that data, and as a leadership team, we sat down and we said, okay, for this coming school year, 22-23, what are some focus areas that we want to look at? And also, how is this going to engage our process for a strategic plan this year? So here's our focus areas. And you'll notice that the focus areas, there's a teaching, learning, innovation focus. There's an equity, inclusion, and belonging focus. There's a culture, community, and communications focus, and there's an operations and finance focus. So this is in preparation for the work that we did for our strategic plan. And we spent a lot of time this year working and looking very closely at these focus areas. My group, the Curriculum Council that we talked about at Ed Affairs, we've really spent our whole fall looking specifically at those focus areas for teaching, learning, and innovation. Okay, equity, inclusion, and belonging. The cultural proficiency team has spent a lot of time this fall looking at that. Culture, community, and communications. Lindsay Norwood and her communications work really focused on that. And then certainly operations and finance, the work that's there. But what I will say is all of these focus areas connect with one another. They all lean on one another and they work collaboratively together. So we partnered with the folks at Bloom Planning. And this is, as we go through this process, you're going to notice discovery, visioning, detailed planning, accountability, and then ultimately the finalization. So here is kind of a timeline, and we are right here. we're at the draft vision for impact statement. Now you'll notice, and you're going to see that we're going to make some adjustments now along this calendar continuum. And that was a decision made by the leadership team in order to engage more stakeholders and more voices in our process. So here's our full planning team is members of our administrative team. We have 4 board members who are on our full planning team. Our core leadership team are folks from Dr. Marseille's office, Office of Teaching and Learning, Office of Student Services and Communications. And they serve as a sounding board for the Bloom team, occasional ad hoc meetings. And then I help to be the project liaison, but we really work collaboratively as a team. And at moments when we say, hey, I think we need to maybe pivot. And I think we've been able to do that recently with the opportunity to engage our stakeholders. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 1 was interviews and focus groups. And what we said in the beginning, this is the discovery phase, but we really relied heavily on the work and built on the work of the audits from last year. So it wasn't discovery from the very beginning. We had a good solid foundation for our discovery. And we collected a lot of information through this discovery phase, as well as the information that we gathered last year. Also, the work of the focus areas also informed a lot of the conversations in the discovery phase. Now we get to phase 2, and this is, you'll notice we made some adjustments, and we felt the adjustments were important to engage more community voice. So vision for impact statement drafting, we adjusted, we're adding a community survey. We're adding, expanding planning team drafts for that statement. We're adjusting, the way that we look at the planning team and how it's constituted. That's where we're going to engage more stakeholder voices. And then certainly the entire planning team participates in analysis and strategy building. That's an adjustment. Core leadership finalizes the vision for impact and statements of intent. And then we go to finalizing our vision for impact. And that's where our leadership team collaborates with Bloom on the facilitation of the process. And then obviously promoting and sharing out the vision for impact session and opportunities for pathways for our community. So you'll notice that was the adjustment from that calendar we showed early on, but we feel as though it's really important, as I said, to pivot at this moment and create some adjustments because it's the best thing for our community in this process. Phase 3 is the planning process. And that's where you're going to start to see some of these things are going to adjust as we go further along. So we have also phase 4 is accountability, and that's where we're going to look at metrics and risk identification and mitigation and accountability. And then certainly phase 5 is the finalization of that project in the spring. And that's where we're going to share drafts and come to ed affairs and come to the board meetings and talk about our work and really share our product. And what I'm very mindful of is this is a product, our strategic plan is something that is going to be a living and breathing document. It's not going to sit on a shelf somewhere. It's going to be something we're all going to feel comfortable about. We're going to talk about, and we're going to feel comfortable discussing it in lots of venues. So as I go back, this is what we started with: the community opportunity, the space to have community survey December 12th, engaging the community in real ways. That inclusive process is something that was really important to us. We sent out December 12th, and it's going to run from the 12th to the 23rd, helping to refine and refocus our vision for impact. And then also the opportunity to engage stakeholders to join us in this process. And as I said, it's the easiest way to get involved. And it's also an opportunity to invite other stakeholders who want to join us to have more voices in this process. And then again, the opportunities, the evening on January 5th, also the Monday, January 9th during the day for the vision for impact. And then the last one is the actualizing the pathways, Saturday, March 11th and Thursday, March 16th. You'll see a lot of communication coming out of my office, from Dr. Marseille's office, reminding people about these dates as they get closer and closer. We said it might be a very similar meeting on Saturday and Thursday, but you're certainly welcome to attend all of them. So that's really important to us, and we're excited that we're engaged in this process. There's a lot of work to be done, but a lot of great work, and we're excited about it. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Conley. First, I want to thank you for adding the additional dates in to get additional community feedback. And I want to particularly thank you for including some daytime meetings. I've heard from some of our parents of children with special needs that for them to participate in things within the district, they really need them to be during the day. while their students are in school, because by the time they get home, it's very much a full-time effort for them to care for their children. So I really appreciate that very much. A question that I had is, if I am a person who lives within the district but does not have children in the district right now, what's the best way for me to be able to participate in this? Would I be able to partake in the survey in some way? Or is it through the meetings that are planned, or both?
So I think through both. I think what we're going to try to do is, and this is what Ms. Norwood and I are going to work very closely. How can we have community members? You know, we have the survey, obviously we'll be emailing it to everyone in the community, but also maybe on the website and having opportunities for people to engage that way as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. So
And we
much.
also have created an email account that we'll share with the community related just to the strategic plan.
Excellent.
We'll
Thank
share
you
that as
very
well.
much.
Can I say something?
Please.
I
Yes.
I think one of the things, and I don't know if we talked about this, but it just came, at least in my mind, maybe we did. But I think oftentimes what has worked or tried to do is the extent in which community members who don't have children in the district, how often they go to our district website. And what we partnered up with our township and asked our township, could we put that link on their front door? Because they're more likely, as we saw, to go to that link than to go to the district website. So we'll explore other opportunities besides that as well, because I think that that's an area in which you're always constantly trying to improve in, and you tend to go through these plans, and every 3 or 4 or 5 years you realize, oh, if I can go back, I'd probably do that. So I do think there's some additional opportunities to determine where those water holes are. For those who may not be as deeply connected in terms of our website, and we'll find some additional platforms to push out that information.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the board? Ms. Holbert?
Quick question. I know this sounds kind of weird. I feel like I should know the answer to this, but what is the board's role in this, in terms of like whether as a stakeholder, strategic partner, or or sounding board, or do we just attend as individual members, or is it wait till the end when you're gonna show us the result? I'm honestly curious.
So go ahead, Dr. Marseille. So there's 4 board members on the planning team, but certainly I would welcome attendance at all of these events, and everyone's welcome to attend. We would love you to attend and get your feedback as well. But yeah, I think what we're going to try to do is update as much as we can, update through our newsletters, emails, as well as, updates at affairs and those kind of things. But certainly we invite you, if you're not part of the planning team, to be certainly engaged in the community for sure.
Just the reason that the entire board does not participate in the planning committee is because we can't have a quorum in those forums. And so,
It's fine.
yeah, no.
Truly curious.
Just for those people might be curious about that. And then, of course, like I'm happy to facilitate conversation to outside of that, some one-on-one conversation to solicit feedback and share information from the meetings, as well as any of the other planning committee members. Other questions or comments?
Actually, just to quickly piggyback on that, would we also fill out a survey as a parent or community member?
Sure.
Also as a board member? Of
course.
Thank you.
And I think the important thing is, please remind other folks, if you haven't filled it in, hey, this is really important. We need to fill this in. Getting everyone's voice, even if they can't attend the meetings, but filling out those surveys is really significant for us.
And I think our team talked about this. Dr. Pratt talked about this, and we know that, and we've heard, so it's not that we're not being attentive, that survey fatigue is a real thing. We also know, based on data, who's more likely to fill out a survey than other particular groups. So we have to break that barrier as well, with other opportunities or other engagement opportunities through the communications office. But we decided to do that because we felt it was extremely important to ground individuals in the fundamental themes that have come out of the year in review. And I think oftentimes in my experience, the danger, if not grounded, individuals start from step one. And they come back and start sharing information that you've already collected, you've already synthesized, you've already decided that to some extent, these are some of the core areas of focus. Not to say you can't emerge and bringing new ideas moving forward, because part of that space will allow that to happen. But what we wanted to be mindful is that where we are, it doesn't turn into an open space. And an open space oftentimes is characterized as come with what is in your mind, in your heart, which is a good place. But that oftentimes, if not structured, will move us away from that. So we wanted to push out some information that kind of grounds individuals in some of the conversations, though we'll welcome others as well, because that vision for impact really is going to ask individuals to think about in a way that maybe they haven't thought about, and that is the mission and vision statement, right? So we have this mission and vision statement that was written several years ago, and the conversation is, to what extent does that connect with our overall work? Are we indeed espousing through experiences exactly what that language says? So we really do want to socialize the community to the work, and I think that is what we were trying to get at, and that Dr. Pratt eloquently said in our meeting this morning and our meeting last week in terms of that process. So I really don't want, for those who are watching and for those who are going to receive my communication, I ask that you give some grace and don't roll the eyes and suck the teeth and think, oh, another survey, right? We understand that, but we wanted to ground the work and socialize the community to what we are doing.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just close with a lot of us have been through strategic planning processes, and that you do get the binder that sits on the shelf sometimes. And we've talked about this several times, that that's not what we want this to be. And it's a living, breathing document. But I've been involved in very successful strategic planning processes myself, professionally as well, and done right. And we're approaching this in all of the right ways from my experience. It does become, it's your guidebook, it's your roadmap for what's going to happen here over the next several years. So it's so incredibly important. Our decisions, how we focus what we do on the education front, how we think about how we spend our money and what our priorities are, get defined through this process. So it is incredibly, incredibly important for folks to participate, because it will guide where we go. So with that,
Well said. And I think you, to some extent, I was going to share that when Ms. Holbert talked about what is the role of the board, right? So if you think about PSBA's set of governance guidelines, right? So behind your nameplate is this kind of visual reminder about advocate earnestly, lead responsibly, effective governance, and the others that come through that process. The strategic plan is indeed a roadmap. It helps to shape the questions with respects to how is this aligned to our strategic plan? Are we making positive strides within our commitment? Where do we need to pivot? Where do we need to accelerate? And where do we need to pull back and reflect? So it is your kind of post, and then your questions and your engagement kind of help steer that organization towards that particular direction.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Conley. So that brings us to Ms. Martin and our budget update focus topic.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to give you an update on the budget, a few aspects of the budget. What we're going to talk about tonight. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction, talk about the budget overview, the structure of the budget. I'm going to talk about the current year budget, the 22-23 budget, the year that we're in. I'm going to look at the next year budget cycle. We're also in that year right now, the budget cycle. And then we'll discuss some challenges that we see. Okay, so first question is, why is the budget important? The budget determines how we will be allocating our limited resources. We want to make sure that we're purposeful in allocating to our highest priorities, our biggest needs. The business department, that is our most important role, is to develop and administer the budget. Now, I'm before the board here, I'm before the board a couple of times a year, but at the finance committee meeting once a month, we discuss the budget every single meeting. It is the third Wednesday of every month. It's a public meeting. We invite all the public to come out to understand what we're doing with the budget. You can have some input, ask questions. Much of what I'm going over tonight is a rehash of what we went over at the finance committee meeting last week. For those who cannot attend the meeting, we also have publicly available our agendas, our presentations, and the minutes. They're on board docs, and they're also on our website. Okay, so first, with the budget overview, I want to talk about the structure of our budget and why we have it structured in the way that we do. So for every expenditure, we code that in two different ways. We code it what we call an object code and a function code. So an object code, which is shown on the left, is the 100, 200, all the way up to 800. And it tells us the what of what we're purchasing, what services or what product. 100 is salaries. Next one is benefits. 300 is purchase professional and technical services. 400 purchase property services. 500 other purchase services. 600 supplies. 700 property, and a couple of catch-all codes at the end. Second code that we use is what we call the function code. And this tells us why we're purchasing that item. So 1,000, if it's coded with a 1,000, that is instruction. That is, to me, another name for classroom. What we code to 1,000 is directly in the classroom, whether it's salaries or supplies. 2,000 is support services, which is very broad. It includes the principals, the counselors, transportation. I'm in support services. So it's very broad. It's directly supporting instruction, but it's not in the classroom. 3,000 is operation of non-instructional services such as student activities or athletics. 4,000 is facilities related. So just to give you an example of how these work in practice, if we were paying salaries, a 100 code, we could pay them to a teacher in the classroom that would be also coded with a 1,000. We could be paying it to a bus driver in transportation, that would be 2,000 support services. Could be paying that salary to a coach, that would be 3,000, or a custodian, 4,000. So every expenditure does have two codes, and the benefit of this coding system is that we can broadly see how we're spending our money. So for example, on the left here is our district. This was 2020. This is how we spent our money in 2020 according to the function. Okay, so the blue, the major part of the pie was 1,000, instruction in the classroom. And really that's what we want to see as much as we can in the classroom. The next biggest category there is support services. We also, because this system is a standard system for the state, it's mandated by PDE. Every other district in the Commonwealth uses the same coding system. So what PDE does with this information is they run their analytics and determine how subsidies are allocated, different purposes within PDE. So for example, we can compare ourselves on the left of allocating just about 60% of our spending to the classroom with the statewide average, which is about 58% to the classroom. So that's a benefit of a standard system within the state. We can also do the same with object codes, the what of what we're purchasing. Our biggest category on the left is salaries and then benefits. It's also the largest categories in the state, salaries and benefits. We, on average, spend more than the statewide average on these two categories. Now, it is interesting to see how we fit in with the state, but the real value of this information to us recently has been to compare it to our peers. And more we're using this data to take a subset of the state, what we consider are districts that are similar to us, and compare these same statistics. So a peer we consider is a local school in the same geographic area that has similar enrollments and similar socioeconomic statistics, basically. And this, what this chart does is it takes three of our peers, which is Radnor, Rose Tree Media, and Upper Dublin, similar in those three respects. And it compares our major object spending to those three districts. And whereas we're spending more in salaries and benefits than the state average, we're actually spending less than our peers on that slice of the pie. So more and more we're using this approach to really, this is a broad analysis, but to dig into certain types of expenditures to see where we differ from our peers. It could tell us where we can improve, or just give us information on how we may be able to do things differently or refocus our budget. Okay, so right now we're in the 22-23 budget year. And we have board reports. The board reports are very detailed. What I've listed here is our major object codes on the left. And these middle columns are our current budget, the 22-23 year, our total budget to the left, our year-to-date expenditures to October 31st, and the percentage of budget that we've spent so far. Very, very broad approach here. Comparing it to our 21-22 year at the same point in time. Okay, now the board reports do go into more detail, leading up to these major object codes, but the reports which are available to the public do go into greater detail, but for purposes of a summary, this is it. So we can see that as of now, as of October 31st, we've spent just about 25% of our budget, and we're about at the same place we were last year at this point in time. We're especially close in the salaries and benefits objects. Okay, these variances, statistics will be more relevant as time goes on. And also as time goes on, we will be getting into more details. When we do see variances, we'll be discussing at the finance committee meetings some of the variances during the year as we go along. Right now, we do not see any major variances in our full year, our anticipated year spending. But again, we're going to update the finance committee each month as time goes on. Okay, now the 23-24 budget cycle. We're actually in the 23-24 budget cycle now. It is the cycle is the year before the actual budget. This year, right now, we are developing next year's budget. And the cycle starts in September. Okay, it's a full year, very defined process. It starts in September when we create a budget calendar. That calendar shows certain benchmarks, milestones that we have to reach by certain dates. Some of the dates are mandated by PDE, some of them are board deadlines, and some of them are internal deadlines. We then distribute budget packets early in the fall to our department heads in our schools. We provide them with some guidelines on what we expect back, and we get that information back in the middle of November. After that, in December, we're going to provide the Finance Committee with a first look in December. And from December through May, we're going to discuss it at every finance meeting. And we also have many benchmark dates in between. So our cycle ends towards May, June, when we present our proposed final budget in May, another presentation before the board, and then the board will adopt the final budget in June. So according to this on the left is an actual excerpt from our budget calendar that was approved by the board. And what I did is I just took the dates that we're in right now, just to give you a status of where we're at now. So November 11th, the packets were due back to the business office. We received everything. Over the next few weeks, we're organizing the data. We're going back if we have questions. Dr. Marseille and I will be meeting several times. We're going to be meeting with the budget owners, we call them, those who own that particular department or school budget. And then in December 21st Finance Committee meeting, we will be presenting the first look. So as we are looking at this process, and we're anticipating certain challenges. First challenge that we see is that we put out a process for anyone for a department that feels they need additional personnel to submit a request. That request is very detailed. It requires very standard information from which we can evaluate those requests. We received 24 such requests, ranging from custodians, groundskeepers, instructional aides, teachers, math and literacy specialists, counselors, nurses, athletic and activities director. And we're in the process now of really going through elimination of what we cannot afford for the budget, and we'll see what we're left with a priority sense to it. So that is a challenge, to meet our needs, but not hire 24 new personnel. We need to limit that, and we're determining that. We're in the process of determining narrowing that down. Second challenge is we want to optimize the mix of our employee versus outside contractors. So for student services for last year, 21-22, we spent about almost $3.5 million in outside contractors. And we are trying to find the right mix of employees versus outside contractors in terms of financial and other cost benefit analysis. And finally, there's some current events that are presenting challenges to us. First one is inflation. Our Act 1 index this year is 4.1%. That is basically the rate of wage inflation. It was published by Pennsylvania Department of Education. It gives us guidelines to make certain estimates in our budget, but the importance of the Act 1 index is it sets a ceiling for how much we can raise taxes going into 23-24 with limited exception. Secondly, our energy costs are a little bit unpredictable. We do have our energy costs in 21-22 are about $716,000. So, it's a significant number. We somewhat mitigate this challenge that in our purchasing with the county, we belong to a consortium where we get very good purchasing power through combining our efforts with other school districts. The economy and the real estate market, we may be heading into recession. We're not sure yet. If we are, those could affect our tax collections, and certainly it's going to put a strain on our residents. Deferred maintenance is a challenge. So what this is we believe that there has been, we haven't kept up with our facilities the way that we should have over the past few years. So our fields, our pool, the modulars over at the high school, classrooms, restrooms, we believe we need more focus on these items to make up for some, what we call deferred maintenance, deferred till now. So we're trying to build that into the budget. Starting this year, we really started focusing on it this year, and we're going to continue to focus on it. So this is kind of a work in progress, but we need to build into the budget what we can afford for next year. Mental health services, there's increasing pressure on schools to expand and offer these services. These are expensive, and the need seems to be increasing. And finally, we do still have a challenging labor market. It's reflecting a booming economy still. So that is a challenge for hiring, retaining, and keeping staff costs under control. Okay. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Martin. I'll open up just with one question. You outlined in here as one of our challenges within student services, the cost of outside contractors, and we're trying to optimize that mix. For anyone who's not familiar with what we mean when we say outside contractor within student services, could someone help us understand that from Dr. Sandberg, perhaps? I think we typically think of contractors as people who provide something other than what we're talking about when we're talking about student services. And given that figure, I think it's helpful for the community to know what exactly that's supporting.
Ian Sandberg, I'm one of the two directors of student services, sir. For outside, these are third-party vendors. So for a variety of the services we provide for students, particularly with disabilities, we may need to retain a third-party vendor to provide those services. And they could be anything ranging from related services such as occupational therapy that we are obligated to provide to a student, or many students in often cases, to PCA one-to-one services, where an adult is following a student, delivering pretty strict protocols for applied behavior analysis and things of that sort.
Thank you. So all things that are enabling students to have participate in the education of the district. It's not consultants, for example, that we're paying to help with student services. And I think it's really important for folks to understand that. Thank you. Open it up to other questions and comments. Mr. Henry?
Yeah, I had more of a comment than a question. Mary, thank you, Ms. Martin. I just wanted to, for everyone watching at home, I wanted to reiterate some of the things that you said, Mary, about all this information is publicly available. I actually was flipping around the last couple of days since our finance committee meeting to look at it myself. It is there. I encourage people to look at it, and I encourage people to come to the finance committee meeting if you're at all interested. Ms. Martin is very patient. She's been the information you provided the board tonight and at this meeting is very helpful, and you kind of break it down into people who are not experts in this. You know, I am not an accountant like Larry next to me is, but so some of this stuff doesn't always make sense to me, but you make it make sense. So I encourage people to come to the meetings because you can ask questions. We had a nice, robust discussion. You're very patient. You'll answer questions. I see a couple of our community members here tonight were there also asking questions, and we can kind of get into it. So I just want to reiterate, this information is available. It is not a secret. Please, community members, look at it, ask questions, and Mary and her team are happy to answer them. So thanks again for presenting tonight.
Dr. Grande?
Thank you for the presentation. Just as a reminder, can Act 1, I know what's embedded in there, but I'm forgetting what the how many years back it reflects? And is it just the 12 months leading up to the determination, or does it?
It's the 12 months leading up to, I believe, September of 22.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Follow-up question on that. It's okay. So relating to exceptions,
Exceptions, yep.
exceptions, that's what it is. Can you speak to what kind of that process is and when we'll know if we're going to ask for any or how that works?
Mhm. So the Act 1 index is basically a ceiling of the limit we can raise taxes, 4.1%. There are three basic exceptions to that rule. You can raise them if you have some school construction, you meet some school construction items. You can raise them if the retirement plan affects your budget in a certain way, or special ed expenses exceed a certain calculation. So the one that we've historically qualified for in the past few years has been special ed exception. And in a nutshell, that is when our special ed, our increase in special ed costs for last year have exceeded our Act 1 index for this year. So it's kind of a trailing calculation that happens. And if we do exceed the index on that calculation, we can apply for an exception to raise taxes more than 4.1% based upon that calculation. If we do qualify, we would apply for it and PDE would review it and approve it or deny it. And if we were approved, that doesn't mean we would have to raise our taxes by more than the index, but we would have that available. So I did a preliminary calculation. It does not look like we would qualify under that exception for this year, but we will use the December Finance Committee meeting to finalize that determination and to see what direction we go there. Really, whether we qualify for the calculation will determine whether I apply for it. I would apply even if we don't intend to use it, just to protect the availability of that for the board to decide ultimately what the tax increase will be based upon the budget they approve.
Thank you.
Ms. Whitson?
That's really good news to hear that after many years of us taking the exception for special ed and using that as a reason to raise taxes, that this is the first year that you're projecting that it won't be necessary. Because my question was, before you mentioned that, was, what are we doing to offset this cost, this extra burden of special ed? Why aren't we making, why is it always in a deficit? Is it because of outside contracting, or is it?
It's being experienced by many districts. We're not unique. It's not because of the outside contracting. It has historically gone up over the past 10 years. So it's a trailing calculation. So I think because
many school districts don't take the exception. Wallingford-Swarthmore has taken the exception every year for the past.
Yeah, we actually did not take it last year. So this will be the second year after taking it 3 years ago.
So again, how does that work into the budgeting structure
So
to prevent
so
that having to happen?
So really, when our special ed costs go up over time, for the immediate, to immediately pay for those, we actually would have to dip into fund balance to pay those, not recovering it until we're able to raise the rate above the index in the following year. Does that make sense?
Do you mind sharing, Ms. Martin, the definition again of how you apply for exceptions? Where if your special education costs exceed or grow faster than
Then the index
the
effectively.
index, then the district is eligible to apply for that.
Yes.
Dr. Sandberg, I asked if you can speak a little bit about what you've been seeing in terms of need and how the district is attempting to address those needs. And are you or have you seen an increase or complexity in terms of the variance of needs depending on that particular child or set of students?
Sure. So one of the things my office does is we analyze what we refer to as child find designations. So there are 13 different disability categories under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. Some of the one category, for instance, just as an example, I don't have that data in front of me, is the category of autism, which we presented on this last week. So it's sort of fresh in my mind. We in this district, we have more students identified as a primary disability category for autism than the average of the state by several percentage points. I want to say about 2.5 percentage points over the average of the state. That category of students is a population of students that ranges certainly, but some of those students have services that, in order to provide those students with a free and appropriate public education, or a FAPE, as they are entitled to, have very, very tailored services, including professionals who their only responsibility is that student throughout the day. So some of those services, some of which are contracted, are very expensive. The alternative would be that those students would not be able to receive an education in their neighborhood school in the least restrictive environment. We would have to look at other placements for them, and so that they could receive those kinds of services. So it is sort of a kind of a predicament, right? We are obligated to provide those students a meaningful education, and we want to do it in the least restrictive environment, as is the law, by the way. And to do so is very expensive. And I think some of the other pieces of attached to the labor issues, Ms. Martin can expound upon.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, didn't see.
Well,
Can you put no one can hear you?
I'm just wondering, like, in the salary portion, like, isn't it cheaper to hire to have an occupational therapist that is full-time employed by the district than contracting it out? Because any type of third party, you're paying top dollar over what an entry level or a qualified speech therapist. And that's a better way of educating, because it's built into the system. You're not going out of.
It's not as clear cut. There are costs and benefits to each way of doing it. An employee is expensive. An outside service is expensive, but you can have them on demand. So you can't have an employee on demand type of thing. So it's not as clear cut, but one of our challenges is to optimize that combination. So we're really looking at that closely. We're comparing our statistics to other districts and really trying to find the right mix.
Dr. Sandberg, sorry again. It's fresh in your mind. Talk to us a little bit about BCBAs. the qualifications of those particular individuals and how those have to match to some extent, or to the extent in which it has to match for the students with specific needs, and why, in your estimation, those price factors might vary.
Sure. So I can take that example as well as speech language pathologists. So when I arrived here in September of 2021, we had a mixture of speech language pathologists, some of whom were direct employed by WSSD and others contracted. So one of the proposals I wrote up and we have since executed as a district was to make all speech language pathologists directly employed, because we looked at the numbers in part, Ms. Whitsett, and that immediately presented about $500,000 in savings. As Ms. Martin pointed out, that is not always the case with every position. An example would be a physical therapist. That is a service that is delivered far less regularly than something like speech and language pathology, or to Dr. Marseille's point, board certified behavior analysts, of which we are in the same predicament that we were in with speech language pathologists. We are in the process of executing a transition plan to make them all direct employed by the district. There are certainly complications with that that I could kind of go on about all night, and I'm happy to go into more detail, perhaps at a facilities and finance meeting or whenever the board would prefer that. But some of those positions, as Ms. Martin pointed out, are tricky because we do not. So for example, our physical therapist also works in other districts because we do not require them full time. I don't believe so. That's kind of an example of where we probably get a better deal financially by subcontracting.
Any other questions or comments this evening? Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. Thank you, Dr. Sandberg also. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Sandberg. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. That takes us then to board announcements, and I would like to report that the board did meet in executive session this evening to discuss personnel matters. With that, we move then to audience recognition for response to items for action on the agenda. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board with any questions or comments that you'd like to share. We do have a 3-minute limit on individual comments, and we'll give you a heads up as you're getting close to that. And with that, if you could just state your name and the street upon which you live.
My name is Leo Carey. I live on Sykes Lane. Dr. Marcel, maybe you addressed this in other board meetings and it's in the minutes, but I must confess I haven't researched it. Could you make some comments about the safety issues that staffing that you presented to the board, I guess, early in the year? Specifically, I think you had 24 some odd positions. Are they filled? And I'd also like to know, we're about 3 months into the school year, what lessons have been learned, both positive and negative. I don't want to dwell on negative things. Could you address that?
Yeah, I'm not sure the number you said in terms of 24. What we've identified is that we have safety and security aides at each of our buildings. So there is one safety and security aide at SRS, one at West, and one at NPE. We also have 2 at the middle school, and two at the high school.
So all total?
Sounds
like less than 10.
2 at the middle school, 2 at the high school, and then 1 each at the elementary.
7.
Yes.
I think your proposal had more positions than that.
Well, we had identified part-time positions that would extend into the evening. Those positions have not been filled because we've been having difficulty acquiring individuals for those part-time positions.
Correct. So the budget, it would sound like it's well under budget.
for those remaining positions, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And
terms of-
lessons learned?
Yeah,
Anything?
I think what we wanted to make sure is that as our campus safety aides get to know our students and know our staff, I said before that so much of this is about relationships and connections and making sure that we have eyes on students and staff as much as possible. So it's good to see many of our safety and security aides at arrival helping individuals. It's good to see them walking through the building, monitoring places where we've had some challenges. It's also great in terms of what I think it has opened up for our administrators is it allows time for administrators to get more into the classroom compared to as a former assistant principal. I understand I'm looking at Dr. Pratt going back to previous days where, you'd spend an hour and 45 minutes in that lunchroom, right? And though it's a great place to be and great interactions, I think it oftentimes limits you in terms of doing some other things. So to be able to have an aide there who's able to provide that supervision helps significantly. You kind of balance that. You're not always there for that 90 some odd minute block. So you'll come in for 30 minutes, you'll go back into the office, you'll handle some administrative aspects, or you get to go into a classroom a little bit more than you used to. So I think the positives have been being able to have more eyes on students. We will present to the board some findings as well. And like everything else, I think that any implementation takes enough time. You need enough time to collect the data. But so far, so good for us in terms of what we are seeing in terms of the connections they're making, their visibility. But you are correct that there are right now some savings because we did set aside for some part-time. As you may be aware, many of our buildings, especially the middle and high school, operate on a 24-hour process. So long after sometimes these board meetings, there's still things happening in the buildings, and we wanted to try to see how we can balance that as well. But we haven't been able to fill those positions. We do have a one full-time position at the high school that we did offer the position to an individual, and that individual opted to take another position at another district. Another example of the idea in terms of budgeting and being competitive, right? Individuals have choices, so we're actively thinking of different ways in terms of trying to fill that full-time position. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who would like to offer comments or questions to the board this evening? Okay. Sure, you may ask another question.
As I've said to Dr. Martin, comparing us to the state, I don't think is very useful. And to Ian, you compared us to the state. And again, I would like to see us compared to those companion schools or for whatever. That's just in general, the presentations. I don't find comparing us to the state. At the sound of being elitist, we have Pittsburgh on the west, Philadelphia on the east, and Alabama in between. So we don't want to compare ourselves to the state, but we don't want to be elitist either. Let me just see if I can quickly. We're on a 6/30 fiscal year. Okay, I figured as much. Finally, another anecdote to Dr. Marcel. As the father of a daughter who lost many district championships, and when she was in college, a conference tournament with an NCAA berth riding on it and lost it. I always say, what's the next best thing to winning the state championship? Losing the state championship. So you're absolutely right on. You got that far. Be proud of yourself. Thank you, and thanks for your volunteering.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, we'll continue then in our agenda, and that brings us, just make sure I turned the page the right way. That brings us to the minutes of the October 25th, 2022 regular business meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Do I have a second?
Second?
I think I heard Mary Jo first. Ms. Witkowski, thank you. Ms. Witkowski-Smith. Do I have any questions or comments this evening on the minutes? Okay, if not, Ms. Elias, if you would please take the roll call vote.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudus.
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt. Aye. Ms. Witset.
Aye.
Ms. Witkowski-Smith,
Aye.
Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
The October minutes passed 9-0.
Thank you. All right, then next up is committee reports. Our first committee report is Educational Affairs. Mr. Henry?
Thank you. So the Educational Affairs Committee met on November 3rd, and I don't want to repeat everything that Dr. Connolly presented up there, but basically we got into the detail of all the things that that Dr. Connolly presented earlier tonight regarding the strategic plan. So we really were able to get in some of the details. And Dr. Mozakowski and Dr. Pratt, Dr. Connolly were able to answer questions. So that was a really nice discussion about the strategic plan, and you saw it earlier tonight. So I don't want to repeat everything that Dr. Connolly just presented. Dr. Pratt also provided an overview of the WSSD Curriculum Council, which was launched this year. Dr. Pratt reviewed the aims of this council that brings together central office administrators and teachers spanning the grades K through 12 through the purpose of receiving, sharing, and initiating dialogue to support and enrich curriculum instruction, assessment, and professional learning, establishing a respectful and effective two-way system of communication between the administration and professional staff, providing a forum for the investigation and consideration of instruction and assessment trends, methods, and materials, and researching and recommending areas of focus to support professional learning. Dr. Pratt also shared a summary of the topics discussed during the September and October school council meetings, which included creating systems of communications between the school buildings and the council related to teacher learning innovation, as well as ways this council will support strategic planning and ongoing work in the various district focus areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I think that it's, let's see, who are we going to next then with Facilities and Finance? Mr. Kudus.
The Facilities and Finance Committees met on Wednesday, November 16th at Strap Haven Middle School. Attending were committee members Rachel Holbert, Kevin Henry, and myself. Other board members attending were Christine Dole, Mary Jo Witkowski-Smith, and Kelly Wattman. District administration attending were Dr. Connolly, Dr. Marseille, and Mary Martin. The Facilities Committee meeting started with Dr. Marseille giving a progress report of current projects to include the replacement of hot water heaters, replacement of the Trinity roof, installation of electronic position sensors and switches on all district exterior doors, and installation of electronic fob readers at all the elementary school access doors. Next, Dr. Marseille provided the status of ELA study of Kingfield and all the athletic fields in the district. The Kingfield portion will include turf replacement, bleacher addition modifications, scoreboard replacement, relocation, and ADA accessibility. ELA will also analyze the health of all the other athletic fields in the district in conjunction with plan usage and upkeep. The study will take several months, and ELA will issue a report with recommendations when completed. There was also a discussion of the timeline for the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, the GISA projects, with board and community members participating. Next, Dr. Marseille shared information about space utilization studies being performed at the 3 elementary schools and the high school. Finally, there was a discussion about future projects, including the LED marquee signs at the middle and high schools, seal coating at SRS in the middle school parking lots, and school entry security systems at each of the elementary schools in the middle school. The meeting concluded with discussions from the community regarding renovations and additions to the tennis courts, the need for additional lighting at the high school and middle school parking lots, creating lighted pathways and better signage at the middle and high schools. The Finance Committee followed. Ms. Martin provided a refresher on district expenditures classifications. She next reviewed the status of the 2022-2023 budget through October 31st, 2022. Next, Ms. Martin explained the monthly financial reports to the board to include payments to vendors, financial statements, and treasurer's reports. She provided an update to the 2023-2024 budget cycle, indicating that the district was on track. Lastly, she presented items for board action during tonight's board meeting. Community members engaged in questions and discussion with board members and administration regarding GISA funding and timing of benefits from the expected energy savings. A member of the community also questioned the timing of the 2021-2022 district audit completion. The next Facilities and Finance Committee meeting will be on December 21st at 7 p.m. in room B226 at the middle school.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Kutis. Next up, we have policy. I think Ms. Witkowski-Smith or Ms. Holbrook. Oh,
Sorry. A little miscommunication there. First, I have to say to Dr. Marseille, the next time that you're feeling nervous at a football game, I invite you to, instead of walking around the parking lot, to come and put in a little time at the pit, at the Panther Pit. And, we can definitely use another hand, usually by the end of the game, cleaning up or, putting things back. I'm happy to use some help.
As long as I don't have to see the scoreboard, I'll put me any place.
That's the thing.
I
If you
can.
work in the back,
Yeah, I
you're
don't
not
see
paying
it.
attention to
All
the
right,
scoreboard.
I'm good.
Something I learned this time, because usually I am proud faced, and this time I got stuck in the back and I didn't know what was going on. So
Well, I remember when I was a coach, people were like, "Where's coach? Where's coach?" Because coach is hiding with like 27 seconds left.
I understand. My family's a lot like that, so I totally get it. So, okay, on with the policy committee meeting. We met on Wednesday, October 26th. During our meeting, we reconsidered policy 707 relating to the use of facilities by various types of groups, policy 913 relating to dissemination of materials by non-school organizations, groups, and individuals, and policy 913.1 relating to corporate sponsorships, partnerships, and advertising. We discussed some questions about the policies and added some language to policy 707 about prohibiting groups identified as hate groups to use our facilities. We will be voting on these policies tonight. We also considered two policies in their first reading. First was policy 206 related to student attendance areas and assignment within the district. The committee got a chance to hear from Mr. Derek Clemens and ask questions about school attendance areas and how registrations and requests are handled. Second was policy 805.2 regarding school security personnel. This will be a new policy, so we discussed ways that it could be made more inclusive of the administration's vision for safety and security aids. Our November Policy Committee meeting is tomorrow, Tuesday, November 22nd. Please join us at 7 o'clock in room B226 at the middle school, where we will consider policies 206 and 805.2 for their second readings, and policy 201 regarding dress and appearance for its first reading.
Thank you, Ms. Holbrook. That takes us to PSBA, Ms. Witkowski-Smith.
So PSBA, I attended the PSBA Delegate Assembly on November 5th. And at that time, legislative priorities are developed and adopted by membership biannually and in even numbered years to coincide with legislative sessions. The priority issues for 2023-2024 are to provide significant continued state and federal financial investments for school districts, to prioritize the mental health and safety needs of our students, to enact comprehensive and meaningful charter school reforms that reduce the financial burden on school districts and require the same high standards of academic performance and accountability, and to oppose efforts to provide direct financial aid to students who would use those funds to enroll in non-public schools, or efforts that would divert state or federal funding away from school districts in order to fund such programs. Part 2 are the core legislative principles and supporting concepts for 2023. The core legislative principles would provide the board a broad policy framework regarding the mission and success of public education, and in the responsibilities of local school boards to ensure that high quality education is provided to each student. These 4 core legislative principles are: support an effective child-centered public education, strengthen the work of local school boards, support for increased equity and accountability, and to secure adequate and equitable funding. Our meeting was concluded at the end of that day.
Thank you for that update. Without wellness advisory, I don't think there was a meeting. There was a meeting.
We had, well, I briefly noted it at our last
Okay.
meeting, but I have a little more to say
Okay, great.
now.
Thank you,
So
Elizabeth.
the Wellness Advisory Committee met Tuesday, October 25th at 4 p.m. The group reviewed the end of year report 2021 to 2022 and the overall purpose of the committee. The committee then discussed 3 main items. The first was compliance with Wellness Policy 246 via the lens of a variety of areas: nutrition promotion, public policy, nutrition education, physical activity, and nutrition guidelines, trying to see if we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. The second area that was discussed was behavioral health, specifically looking at the multi-tiered systems of support, which includes positive behavior intervention and support, and also response to instruction and intervention. And we talked about how PBIS application in each of, or how PBIS is being applied in each of the district schools. And then finally, Ms. Biegert, yeah, did I get that right? Talked about nutrition in school lunches and gave the same presentation, I believe, that she just gave tonight. So that's what was covered. When is the next wellness committee meeting? Just in January. It's always Tuesdays at a Tuesday at 4 p.m. I don't know the exact date, but in January. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Delaware County Community College Liaison, Ms. Holbert again.
Really nothing to report.
Thank you. Delaware County Intermediate Unit, Mr. Kudis.
Maybe one item of interest. On November 2nd, the Board of Directors approved the purchase of esports hardware and equipment and related furniture, all from a grant from the Boeing Employees Community Fund, to set up an esports facility that is, my understanding, it is available for use by all the county schools, public schools.
I'm sorry, what is it?
Esports.
Esports, right.
Does Strathaven have an esports team?
Yes.
Okay, this is supposed to be a facility that would facilitate any competitions. And it's first come, first served, sign up on the schedule.
Excellent. Thank you very
That's
much. Delaware County School Board Legislative Council, Ms. Westhead. No updates this evening. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That takes us then to personnel. We have 13 items for action this evening in personnel. Are there any items that anyone would like to separate from the rest? Seeing none, we'll move through. Let's see. First, we have resignations as stipulated in the agenda. Second, we have the appointment of certified and non-certified personnel as stipulated. We have leaves of absence as stipulated, changes of assignment as stipulated in the agenda, direct payments as stipulated. We have 2022-2023 mentor appointments as stipulated. We have the 2022-2023 fall athletic supplementals as stipulated, and 2022-2023 fall athletic supplemental postseason pay. As we know, we've had a lot of postseason action this fall. So we have that for action on this evening's agenda as stipulated. We have 2022-2023 winter athletic supplementals as stipulated. 2022-2023 activity supplementals as stipulated. 2022-2023 conference requests as stipulated. We have cultural proficiency summer work as stipulated. Cultural proficiency supplementals also as stipulated. And that concludes this section. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Witkowski-Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Holbert. Any comments or questions this evening? Mr. Henry, or no, okay. I just wanted to note, going back for a second, on our conference requests, that I was really happy to see the support in the conference requests for National Math Conference, and Dr. Benzing and several of our math teachers attending the conference in Baltimore, given our focus on STEM education. That was exciting to see in this particular agenda. With that, Ms. Elias, if you would please take the roll call vote.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witset. Ms. Witkowski-Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Personnel items A through M passes 9-0.
Thank you. Then in policy, we have 3 policies for approval this evening. Are there any policies that anyone would like to separate from the rest? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Witkowski-Smith. Any comments or questions this evening? I would, Mr. Berman, we spent a good bit of time talking about some of these policies with respect to use of facilities. And I just wanted to share a little bit of comment about that because it has been a matter that we've received some questions about. And I wondered if you could just share just a few comments, because there have been questions about the use of school district facilities and how do we decide who is or who is not permitted to use our facilities, which we've attempted to address in the policy itself. But with respect to religious organizations in particular and their ability to rent school district facilities, that has come to the attention of the board with some questions. And I wondered if you could comment a little bit about the legal parameters with respect to if you're going to open your facilities to the public, what you can and cannot restrict at that point.
Specifically as it relates to religious organizations. So the answer is once you've opened your facilities for other uses, you can't then say except not for religious uses. The religious uses, it would be considered a violation of their ability to free practice of their religion. And so you can't really write the policy in such a way that you can restrict it that way. Moreover, you're not going to be able to restrict it in terms of what people can and can't say through that. Now, at the same time, you can restrict as it relates to time, place, manner, that sort of thing. So I know there was a concern about some of the signs that were up. Specifically, signs that were directing people to where the church service was taking place, but also I think there was a sign down at the corner of Coppels and Providence that was advertising that, hey, there's a church here. And you could say, hey, we're not going to allow that. But if you did that, then there are other organizations that are doing essentially the same thing. For instance, I'm pretty sure that when the NPAA tournaments are taking place here, that they put up signs all over the place. And if you're going to restrict it for the religious organizations, you're also going to have to restrict it for the non-religious organizations. You can't be anti-religion, just the same way as you can't be espousing a particular religion. You can't say, we like this religion, but not that religion. You also can't say, we like non-religion over religion, or vice versa. So when it comes to opening your facilities, these are considerations that you need to be making when you're deciding on the rules that are going to apply, because they have to be applied evenly to everybody. Does that answer your question?
It does. I thank you for providing that feedback. It's a matter that we discussed extensively in the review of the policies in the policy committee. Knowing that a lot of folks were not there from the public to hear that conversation, and knowing that we've had some feedback about that, I thought it was very important for folks to understand that it's kind of an all or nothing game here. If we're going to open up the facilities for the use of the community, we can't then restrict a religious organization from having access to the facility in the same manner that we offer to other members of the community. As you said, we can limit time and place, for example, but then again, those same rules would have to apply to everyone. So, and given that the facilities are used extensively by the community, that would have posed a very significant hardship on our community to close our facilities off to use. Okay, any other comment or questions on the policies up for a vote this evening? Okay, if not, Ms. Elias, if you would please take the roll call vote.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witsit, Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry,
Aye.
and Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Policy 707, 913, and 913.1 passes 9-0.
Thank you. Next up in curriculum, we have one item for action in curriculum this evening, and that is the approval of an independent contractor agreement with Dr. Cheryl Horsey. Does anyone have questions or comments about this particular item? Whoops, I forgot to take the motion. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Grande. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard Ms. Holbert first. Okay, now I will ask, does anyone have any questions or comments about this agreement? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Elias, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt,
Aye.
Ms. Witsit,
Aye.
Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
and Ms. Walkman.
Aye.
Policy motion passes 9-0. Oh, excuse me, curriculum motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. We have one item then for action in student services. That is an educational services agreement for a student. Do I have a motion for approval? Thank you, Mr. Kudis.
Second.
And thank you, Dr. Grande. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Elias, again, if you could please take the roll call vote.
Ms. Witsit, Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis.
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Mrs. Vogt,
Aye.
and Mrs. Walkman.
Aye.
Student Services, motion passes 9-0.
Next up, we have 6 items for action this evening in finance. Are there any items that anyone would like to separate from the rest? Okay, seeing none. First, we have bills paid to vendors for October 15th, 2022 through November 11th, 2022. We have the financial statements for October 2022, the treasurer's report for October 2022. We have the approval of the Solient contract for a behavior technician as stipulated. We have the approval of a parent agreement as stipulated. We have the approval of 2 tax settlements as stipulated and as attached. And that is the entire section. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Kudis. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, I'm going to give that one. Was that Ms. Woodsett? Ms. Woodsett, I heard your first. So Ms. Woodsett seconds. Do we have any questions or comments on these items this evening? Okay, seeing none, if you would please take the roll call vote.
Ms. Wachowski Smith,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
Aye.
Mr. Henry.
Aye.
Mrs. Holbert,
Aye.
Mr. Kudis,
Aye.
Mrs. Dole,
Aye.
Dr. Grande,
I think you meant me.
Yeah, I voted already.
did I say
Wendy.
Dr. Grande? Ms. Woodsett? Or wait, no, oh, I'm sorry. I said Mr. Kudis, Mrs. Dole, Dr. Grande. I always came, sorry about that. Ms. Woodsett. And Mrs. Walkman.
I think you also, I never voted. Ms. Vote.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ironically, vote,
I could have changed.
I didn't get to
Sorry about that. That was really good. Mrs. Bell. Sorry.
Aye. I know my
Clearly,
whole life.
Changed my chart.
I've been waiting on that.
We got everyone.
Okay, finance items A through F passes
I need to
9
vote still.
0.
Wait,
Miss, it's Walkman, sorry.
it's a long night. I have more coffee if you need some. I
I
promise.
think I need some.
Aye.
Okay. Finance items A through F passes 9 0.
I do sometimes think our rotation process that we go
Well,
through there makes things
You know what,
confusing.
you're copying it one after the
Yes.
other, but it looks like this chart is off, so I'll have to fix.
I
it
have
for the next
done
time.
the same before.
Sorry.
I feel for you. Okay, that brings us to audience recognition for any other topics that were not on tonight's agenda for action. Do we have anyone who would like to speak for items not on the agenda for action? Okay, seeing none, do we have any old business this evening? In new business, I'll take us to new business then. I'll just note that our next meeting is on December 5th, and that is the annual reorganization meeting. That is not a typical legislative meeting, but it's the time at which we will establish the leadership of the board for the next school year. And assignment for committees will be discussed at that time, as well as anything else that our solicitor tells us that we need to cover in that meeting. But we invite anyone to participate either in person or via YouTube. It's again Monday, December 5th, and that will be at 7 p.m. Here in the middle school. Are there any other new business items for this evening? Okay, seeing none, then this meeting is adjourned. There we go. I'm not hitting this. No, right.